terrorist ideology. My next guest, well-versed in the geopolitics of the Arabian Peninsula. He's been calling for Al Jazeera to be shut down for years. Ali Shihabi joins us now from Washington. The Qataris describe the quartet's actions as, and I quote, a propaganda campaign designed to curtail Qatar's sovereignty and dictate its foreign policy. They said that at the beginning, they continue to say it, and they are not backing down. What happens next?
Becky, the issue is not even Al Jazeera or a military base. The issue are Qatar adhering to its legal agreements signed in 2013 and 2014 by their emir. And these are the documents that CNN was able to source a couple of days ago, which have now been read by everybody in the region. And they show very clearly that Qatar had committed to control Al Jazeera, that in effect it closed down one of its Al Jazeera branches beaming into Egypt, that Qatar was going to stop financing terrorism and stop financing opposition. It was going to stop support for the Muslim Brotherhood. So the whole question is simply holding them to their commitments, holding them to their agreements. And that's why Secretary Tillerson's visit is not being, or his actions in the past few days, my understanding is they have not been taken well by the quartet, because this is not an issue of finding a reasonable solution. This is an issue of holding people to their international treaties. And as the Secretary of State and the chief diplomat, he should be upholding these treaties.
Yep. Right, okay, listen, you've forgotten more about the geopolitics of this region, Ali, than most people will ever know. You concentrate your efforts on looking at the challenges that this region faces in relations between the US and countries in this region. What sort of leverage do you think Rex Tillerson thinks he has now with those foreign ministers in Riyadh, bringing, as you say, or stepping off a flight after, as you rightly point out, some pretty damaging words as far as the quartet are concerned? You know, Qatar's been in a very clear in its position and very reasonable.
Well, he's not going to have much leverage with the, after all, he's talking about 4 allies of his. Saudi Arabia is a very strong ally, Egypt, the UAE, and Qatar. But again, he's also talking about the 3 largest countries in the Arab world, 150 million people, versus a Qatar of 250,000 people. So, yeah, America's not going to put its relationship with those 3 at risk for the sake of Qatar. Ultimately, the countries are asking for Qatar to abide by its written agreements, signed and re-signed a year later, 2013 and 2014. That's all the countries are asking for. The recent 13 requests that went in, there was a little bit of negotiation tactics there in terms, I don't think anybody wants Al Jazeera to close down. They just want Al Jazeera to adhere to the commitments that its owner made in writing in 2013 and 2014, which is to stop undermining the security of his neighbors, to stop promoting jihadi organizations and terrorist organizations in the region, to stop giving them a platform. And Qatar has agreed to that in writing. So there is really nothing to debate now, and that's why the attitude of these countries is being so firm. And I do not expect Secretary Tillerson will be able to get much flexibility out of them, because their patience has run out. They have been patient since 2014. That's the question then, isn't it, Ali? Yeah, what happens next then? Egypt, for example, wants to kick Qatar out of the global coalition against ISIS. Here's a look at all the members. I'm just showing our viewers here, quite a club, more than 60 members in all, including Saudi, Kuwait, and the United Arab Emirates. Egypt says it's just not acceptable for coalition partners to include countries that support terrorism. They are, of course, a member of the anti-terrorism or anti-terror quartet, as the 4 call themselves. Yes.
Is that likely? I mean, what's the impact?
Becky, what will probably happen is that this, if you want, ostracization of Qatar will continue for a number of months, if not years. Because as you show with your story of the cows, the Qataris are very rich. They have access to global markets. So they're not going to starve, and Qatar is not going to collapse. But Qatar is going to be isolated from its family. And, They may be thrown out of this or that coalition, but the most potent thing is that this embargo on Qatar is going to, or blockade if you want, whatever you want to call it, by these three countries and by Egypt is going to continue until the Qataris meet their written commitments, which they made in 2013 and 2014. It's as simple as that. And as the chief diplomat, Secretary Tillerson should understand that better than anybody. If you don't meet your written commitments signed by your head of state, there's nothing left for diplomacy or the rule of law in trying to bring order to the region.
Just very, very briefly, because you're in Washington, is there a complete disconnect between the White House's foreign policy when it comes to this story in Saudi and the State Departments and the DODs?
I think there is a feeling in Washington and even in the region that Secretary Tillerson, you know, Qatar was Exxon's most important foreign investment. So he has dealt with Qatar extensively for years. He knows them very well. They're his closest relationship. So it's understood that he brings, you know, a certain passion, you know, empathy for them. So I think that guides him a little bit in what he's doing. But ultimately, the reality is that you have the three most powerful Arab countries that are America's close allies also, and you have the legal standing of the agreements that they signed with Qatar. And America should be upholding the rule of law over everything else. So, you know, you signed an agreement, it's public, you see the conditions, meet those conditions. They've been there from 2013 and 2014, and the patience has run out. Nobody's going to take your word anymore. Nobody's going to take the word of Qatar signing, you know, an anti-MOU with Secretary Tillerson yesterday. Frankly, that's hardly worth the paper it's written on. Because if the Emir of Qatar can make multiple undertakings in writing, agreements with his allies in the region, and then break them immediately, then what's the signature of Qatar worth? Frankly, nothing.
Ali Shihabi is the executive director of the Arabian Foundation out of Washington. For you, sir, we appreciate your analysis, and we are staying on top of this story for you. If you